I've never met him, but I'm pretty sure my neighbor is a jerk. I believe that because of the flags he flies in his car, his fence, his trees. These flags change occasionally, but the general message is the same. He is intentionally demeaning marginalized people, people who also happen to be his own neighbors. And every time I drive past his house, I make fun of him. And I feel completely justified in doing this. It's not my finest moment. But to be blunt, I'm not sure he deserves my finest moment. I don't hate this guy, whoever he is. He may well be a good husband, a doting father, an exemplary employee, but I don't care. He acts like a jerk, and while I would be delighted to be wrong about this guy, I am pretty sure he would be delighted by my reaction. And I suspect that if you think about it, you have a neighbor just like mine. And these are the people I think about when I think about love. What? How do you do it? 2 weeks ago, I spoke at some length about the changes to our principles and sources that our faith tradition is currently exploring. In that discussion, which is now available on the YouTubes, we explored love as both an action and a thing, something we can do and something we want, a verb, a noun, both. And whatever else it is, we want to say that it sits at the center of our faith. What the Article 2 Commission is proposing is that the shared values we have chosen to lift up, values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity, these should be interpreted from the perspective of love. Love should be a sort of guide, a lens, a way not just of being or seeing, but of doing in the world. Those values that we hold most dear. As the 2015 novel Station 11 tells us, survival is not enough. Love, whatever else it is, should have a character, a flavor, a bias, and a preference, one that roots us and orients us toward a future where all people are able to flourish in their weirdness, their wonderfulness, and their collective uniqueness. Love as our Rosetta Stone. I think that's pretty interesting. It's provocative. And while I quite like it, I am still a little fuzzy on that word. Love used this way is clearly a mashup, an amalgam, a combination, a blending of several common meanings of that single silly word, love. And that brings me to today's overthinking experiment. So what is love? So aside from the title of a 1993 hit by the artist Hathaway, anybody? What is love? Nope. All right, fine. I'm convinced that love, that word, is like God and democracy, hope, family, home, a word that can be notoriously difficult to pin down. I think if we polled 25 of you, I'm pretty sure we'd come up with at least 25 different definitions. So here are some. Love as genuine affection. I love coffee, my dogs, and sleeping late. Or maybe love as sincere admiration. I respect and want to emulate that person. Love is a kind of mania. I'm obsessed with this, with you, with this person, whatever. I want to become you. Or maybe it's true friendship. I love, care, and celebrate my friends. Could be romantic attraction. I love my wife. She's totally hot. What? Parental love, right? I love my parents, my kids, my family. Compassion. I care about your suffering and I am moved to help. And we should never forget self-love, that I respect, care for, and affirm the value of myself. And then there's that weird one, higher love. The love we might call ultimate love, or perhaps the love that transcends mystery. a love that suffuses all of existence, a love that calls us human beings toward our better selves, a love that some of us might even call God. I think it's fair to say that all of these are love, and the reason for that is English people. Honestly, if my ancestors had talked more about their emotions, there would clearly be more words in their language. Anyway, some of these variations of love come to us from the ancient Greek. Some I just totally made up. Like I said, no fact checking. But I think most of you would agree that these are more or less distinct feelings, though I suppose we all tend to blend things together a bit, and that one may well move between these various loves, depending on history, circumstance, and understanding. Someone you admire may suddenly become an object of romance. Someone you have compassion for may become a true friend. You may suddenly hate coffee, dogs, or sleeping late, in which case God does not love you. I'm kidding. God will always love you, even when you're wrong. But the point, the list isn't exhaustive or exclusive. Emotions, language, human beings, we don't really work like that. Of all of these categories, it's that last one, it's the most perplexing. It's the one I want to lean a bit into today, higher love. Take the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Some of you may have heard this before. If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all of my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part, but when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. And when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then we will see face to face. Now I only know in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love remain, these three. And the greatest of these is love. This is perhaps the classic text about love here in the Western world. In this letter, Paul sets both a standard for human behavior and simultaneously created the most requested wedding reading of all time. As most of you know, Paul probably spoke both Aramaic and ancient Greek. The letters that we have of his, and we only have a few, there were probably very, very many, but the letters we have, like this one written to the church in Corinth, they were all in Greek. That ancient Greek word he used that we now translate as love was an odd one, not in common use at that time or since, agape. And to be completely honest, no one really knows what that word means. Today, scholars suggest that this word is probably closer to what we mean as charity than what we normally mean by love. That is, we believe that the author may have intended overtones of obligation towards mutual care and responsibility, but later tradition in a different way, offers us the example of the relationship God has for creation. Unfortunately for us, Paul was not a systematic theologian with sensitivities toward modern science of linguistics or semantics. We have to guess. What we do know is that Paul was a church planter, traveling the ancient Mediterranean world, writing letters to former students to express his vast annoyance with how dumb they were acting. This first letter to Corinth is actually a case in point. Apparently, that church was a hot mess. The specific problem Paul is discussing in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 are problems with the spiritual practice of speaking in tongues. Specifically, who gets to and whether it gives you some sort of special status. To be clear, the church in Corinth had other problems too. Folks were getting drunk at the worship service, being rude to each other, and were routinely swiping right on the church directory as if it were the Tinder app. Good times. Maybe not quite what Paul had in mind for church. This much quoted section on love, agape again, is not about romance, couples, or relationships. Sorry about that. Instead, it is Paul's attempt to reframe the entire basis of Christian faith, to ground it not on mystery, gifts of the Spirit, or secret knowledge, which is what the Corinthians were at that point arguing. Instead, Paul wanted to ground faith in something new, a higher love. For the record, I'm pretty sure he created this higher love stuff out of whole cloth, just to correct the bad behavior in Corinth. But even so, the move was revolutionary. As the philosopher Simon May describes in his book, Love, a History, quote, Christianity makes love a divine power that ordinary people can express. With the aid of this power and the relationships that celebrate it, we can rise above the terrors and traps of earthly life and redeem suffering, pain, loss, anxiety, evil, and death. Through love, humans can become godlike, even if only imperfectly and fleetingly. How are we to do this? Just love each other, imperfectly and fleetingly. For the record, this reframing, fuzzy as it is, totally worked. And love became the defining characteristic of Christian communities to all outsiders. The question of how to love each other, however, was taken up by Jesus himself in the Gospels. He says, for example, quote, the first commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. This is obviously harder to do than it is to say. And the history of the last 2,000 years shows rather clearly how well Christendom has done with this great commandment. I'm tempted to say that the fact that we do not love each other as we have been taught means either we cannot or we choose not. And to be honest, I think both might be true. Recall a story by Howard Thurman. I can't actually find the reference, so you'll have to deal with my paraphrase. He, in this talk, is talking about the Great Commandment from the Gospels when he says something like, I know I'm supposed to love my neighbors, but sometimes they make it hard. This is a sentiment we can all get behind, I suspect. It's a truism, a triviality, a cliche to say that human beings are imperfect. And from our imperfection, it is often, not sometimes, often difficult to see the other as worthy of dignity and respect, much less a higher love. And yeah, I'm thinking of my flag-waving neighbor here. And I am reminded of what Bilbo Baggins told the crowd on the occasion of his 11th birthday. I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. Loving your actual neighbors is hard enough. And if everyone everywhere is supposed to also be your neighbor, even that flag-waving jerk, we have clearly moved from challenging to implausible. Howard Thurman's advice, and he has some, he prays that God will one day let him want to love his neighbor. Can I get an amen? I want to love my neighbor, right? Yeah. Thinking of our national politics, this might be manageable as a step. Maybe, if not love today, I want to one day want to love. Unfortunately, love, at least as the Bible text lays it out, is just not as easy as that other thing. And as those of us who, against all advice, are continuing to engage with social media, we know that disrespect, distrust, and disgust are easy to fabricate, easy to manipulate, easy to activate. We seem wired for the negative, don't we? Now, we centered this problem here back in December when we were visited by the folks from Braver Angels, an organization dedicated to bringing sides together to dismantle the evil of political polarization that is plaguing our country and the larger world. Back then, we learned some tools for recognizing our othering impulses, how to respond without ridicule or contempt, how to put conversations back onto productive ground. This is powerful stuff. And as we learned then, while hope is not lost, love is certainly swimming upstream. Making things better is going to take a lot of time, effort, and work, and maybe a couple dozen criminal convictions. But I digress. I wish I had better news here. I don't know of a way to make all of the human beings on this planet suddenly wake up, own their crappy behavior, and choose to do better. To be honest, this is the part of our liberal justice work that's missing. Because we can change all the laws, all the rules, all the procedures that are hurting and oppressing our family, friends, and neighbors. And don't get me wrong, we absolutely should make those changes. But unless we are able to rewire our primitive little lizard brains, all of them, with all of our us-them reflexes, our in-out vision, our strangers are out to get us circuitry, there's only so much we can do. Check a history book if you don't believe me. So what can we do? Well, turns out some of it you are already doing. I'm reminded of the following quote by the theologian Stanley Hauerwas. Quote, "The most creative social strategy we have to offer is the church. Here we show the world a manner of life the world can never achieve through social coercion or governmental action. We serve the world by showing it a place where God is forming a family out of strangers." And believe it or not, that brings me to Buddhism. One of my favorite quotes about religion comes from Thich Nhat Hanh. He taught us, quote, "There is a misconception that Buddhism is a religion and that you worship Buddha. Buddhism is a practice like yoga. You can be a Christian and practice Buddhism. I met a Catholic priest once who lives in a Buddhist monastery in France. He told me that Buddhism makes him a better Christian. I love that." End quote. Obviously, you don't have to become Buddhist. You are fully invited to be, stay, and grow in this living tradition we call Unitarian Universalism, or really whatever faith you choose to claim. But if you'd like to explore how Buddhist practice can change your world, something we UUs are pretty keen on, I do have a suggestion. We have 2 classes here at UUSG, one on Wednesday night, one on Sunday night. They're different, but one of the points of connection between the 2 groups is the simple realization that if there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there's to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there's to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there's to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there's to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Okay, so for those of you keeping track, that's actually the Tao Te Ching, not Buddha. But I think Buddha would have totally endorsed that sentiment, though he might have added one line, that if there's to be peace in the heart, there must be practice. And as my friend, the Venerable Bhante Sujatha, taught me, when it comes to changing the world, the whole world is too big, but the whole you, that is the perfect size. Start there. So let's take the hint and maybe practice that right now. Please, repeat after me. May I be happy, may I be well, may I be peaceful. May I be happy, may I be well, may I be peaceful. May you be happy, may you be well, may you be peaceful. May you be happy, may you be well, may you be peaceful. May all people be happy, may all people be well, may all people be peaceful. May all people be happy, may all people be well, may all people be peaceful. This is the practice of loving kindness. Repeating this mantra to yourself is one of the classic Buddhist meditations. And maybe this is the point for us today. Love as a practice you can start right now, a practice that you can carry with you anywhere you go, a sort of guide, a lens, a way of not just being or seeing, but of doing in this world that lifts up that one value we put at the center of our faith. Obviously, it would be best if everyone on the whole planet did this, practiced it, carried it with them into all of their interactions, their relationships, and their decisions. Failing that, our practice is not likely to change the world. But maybe it can change you, if only a little, if only in part. And maybe that part is the part that is waiting for you. Unitarian Universalists have talked about the vast web of life for a long time. Using the new words of the proposed Article 2 changes, our old seventh principle becomes the value of interdependence, where we are asked to, quote, honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place within it, end quote. And I'm remembering our opening. We are invited to hear that in the light of love, a higher love, a love transcendent, a love that calls us toward each other, to recenter in our lives the most important things, the best of us, the most aspirational aspects of our life, the point of our whole lives, the goal of our species. Love, whatever else it is, should have that character. A flavor, a bias, and preference, one that roots us and orients us toward a future where all people are able to flourish in all their weirdness, their wonderfulness, and their collective uniqueness. A place where we love each other as we are called to love ourselves. A place where we are made whole. A place where we are known. A place we know. A place made out of those who used to be strangers, a place we can now call home. It is hard to love. I know it. You know it. The dude on the corner with the flags, my God, I hope he knows it. And I'm reminded of another Howard Thurman quote, but really this one's more of an image. And this is what I'll leave you with today. Thurman said that each of us is born with a crown over our heads, a crown of hope, of light, of love, a crown that each of us will spend the rest of our lives trying to grow tall enough to wear. It's a beautiful image. I want to believe in it, but if I'm going to get there, I think I'm going to need some help, your help. And maybe that was the point all along. Amen.
Visit us at uusg.org.